Gutvach, learning as a schus for Shlema, for Ilana Chabeserach, and for Bastian Bas Chaya. We're on Daf Tzadi Tes Amid Aleph, middle of the Amid. We had just said a machlekes. The two man the Amrim. Rav Asi says that the shear for bittul is 1 in 100, and the other man, I think it was Rav Chia, said that the shear is 1 in 60, which is what we're more familiar with. So pretty much in the middle of the Yom, he was saying over the machlokes. Is it true, like Ravasi says, that when you have something of Isser that's mixed into something of Heter, you need 100 to be mevatel it? V'hatanan lema amru kol hamchametz umetavel umedam lahachmer min b'minay. This is a little bit of a complicated, just a strangely set up Mishnah. I think it's in Arlo. Yeah. And under what circumstances do we say that someone who is mechametz, which is placing something that causes something to become chametz, a leavening, like a sourdough that causes a fermentation of a bread, umetavel, or if someone spices, he places in spices that causes a taste, causes a reaction in the food it's put into. Or medama is where you cook them together. Lahachmir, when do we say that it's lahachmir? Min b'minay. When you have min b'minay, if you mix together two things that are the same, and one is also and one is mutter, then it's going to be lahachmir.
Where are we up to?
We're on Tzadi Tes Amid Aleph in the middle of the Yamid. And when do we say it's lahakal ulahachmer? When do we say that it's sometimes lakula and sometimes lachumra, unlike min b'mina, which is always lachumra, min v'she'ena mina. When you mix together min v'she'ena mina, just the grammar of this Mishnah is sort of difficult, but it's not saying anything that complicated. So the Mishnah continues, uktani seifa. So the Mishnah on our Gemara, we're going to first. That Mishnah continues and explains what it meant. Our Mishnah is jumping, our Gemara, is jumping to the explanation of the second part of that Mishnah. We said that lahakal lahachamer is by mimish einamina. So we say in the second part of that Mishnah where it explains lahakal lahachamer, mimish einamina, ketzad, what is that? Grisin to nishbashulim hadashim, when you have grisin, which is a kind of beans that were cooked with lentils, so they're different. They're not min b'mina, they're two separate minim. And yesh b'hem and tam, if they give a tam, meaning if it was like we said, if it caused it to ferment, or if it caused it to be spiced, you could see an effect on the mutter part from the part that was asur. Then if there's going to be an effect from the Isser on the Heter, that you could look at it, you could taste it, and you can see the difference, then it's going to be Asr under all circumstances. And that's going to be both in the Reisha and the Seif of the Mishnah. That's always going to be the case. The Mishnah is like a little bit unnecessarily complicated, because that's always the case, that if you have Isser that affects the Heter, and it's discernible in the Heter, that it's going to be Asr. But what is the lahakal lahachmer? That's the lahachmer part of lahakal lahachmer by min b'she'ena mina. Ema have a nice in time, but if it doesn't have any discernible effect, nothing that we can see or taste, so bein yeshesh ben lahalas meya v'echad, bein ein ben lahalas meya echad mutter. Whether there is enough iser to be what do you call it? To be bottled in 101. Or whether it doesn't even have enough, there's not enough, even if there's less than 101 by the heter, it's still going to be mutter. So that's the lakula. So the mashma, so that is, the Gemara says, Ein behen lahalas b'meya v'echad, it's mashma, that min b'she'ena minay, even if you don't have 101 to be mevatel, it's still going to be kosher. It's still going to be mutter. So what does it mean that you do have? Doesn't mean that it's mutter, even though it's roiv Isser. It doesn't even mean that if it's a roiv, even if it's roiv heter, it obviously means it has to be bottled in some way. Elamai. So what is it bottling? La b'shishim. We're saying it's not 101. Doesn't need 101. So what is it saying? It does need. It means it needs 60. So this is kasha. So this is Shver and Rabasi. Rabasi said the shear is 100, and we're saying you don't need 101. The mashmai, the understanding of the Gemara is when it says 101, it means it means ein bahem lahalis b'meyav echad is going to be mutter, meaning that it has one of Isser and 100 of Heter, so it adds up to 101, so that it's going to be mutter. So Zak Gemara, so l'chayre it's Shver and Ravasi. So Zak Gemara, loy, no, that wasn't the mashmois. When it said it's not, even if it doesn't have to be bottled at 101 of Heter, it means as opposed to being with 100. So Umam is coming to the thought, the idea that we're being mechalik between 101 and 100. According to Ravasi, the way you understand that Mishnah is it's saying that mimbish einay minay, it's going to be bottled if there's 101, but it won't be bottled. It needs 100 to be bottled, but not, it doesn't need 60, it will be bottled in 100. Frak the Gemara of Hamidaresha V'meya Havi Sefer B'Shishim. The Gemara says, but we're trying to be mechalik between the Reisha and the Sefer. Now, like I said, the order in which we're being presented with the explanation, with the Mishnah and its explanation, is a little strange, because we said, first the rule, we said that Mim B'minoi is lahachmir, and Mim B'she'ena Minoi is lahachmir lahakal. And we said, what was the lahakal? Now, both of them are machmir, in that if you can tell, if you can discern the Isser in the Heter, it's always going to be Aser, regardless of how much Heter there is. It means if you, we've seen this before, that if you put a piece of sourdough into your, of that's Aser, into your Heter, your dough of Heter, and it causes it to rise, it's always going to be Aser because that dough is still nicker in the Heter. But, so that, in both cases, whether it's Mim B'mina or Mim B'she'ena Mina. But we said the difference is that by, so what we explained, that what does it mean Mim B'she'ena Mina is also lahakal, that means that it doesn't need 100 if it's not discernible. It doesn't need 101 in order for it to be mutter. So Ravasi is saying, but what does it need? It does need 100. It doesn't need 101, but it needs 100. But fact there, we said in the second part of the Mishnah, we said Mim B'minai is what was the exact lashon? It's lahachmir. What does it mean? It's lahachmir. It's the Garash, the Gemara, the Tani Reisha, lahachmir minumina ketzad. What does it mean? I'm sorry, I said it wrong. That's really the Reisha. The Reisha was lahachmir min b'minai ketzad. What is the case of min b'minai that's lahachmir? Sa'ar shel chitin. If you have some sourdough of chitin, shenafol le'isas chitin, which fell into a dough of chitin. So they're both the same min. V'yesh by kedei l'chametz. So in that case, ben yesh by kedei l'halas v'meya v'echad, ben ein by kedei l'halas v'meya v'echad. Also, since as long as it is enough to cause it to ferment, and it's discernible, then it's going to be aser for sure. But ein by l'halas v'meya v'echad. But if it doesn't have enough to be mala in 101, ben yesh by kedei l'chametz, ben ein by kedei l'chametz aser. And if it doesn't have up to 101 of heter to be metaret, it's going to be aser regardless, because it needs to have 101 in order of heter to be mevatel the isr. So Zaktamar Reisha v'Sefer b'meya. So in this case, so it's coming out in the end. There's no difference between Mim b'minai and Mim b'she'ena minai. We're saying in either case, you need if it's discernible what caused that the isser in the heter, it's going to be aser. If it's not, we're saying we came to the same conclusion essentially that whether it's mim b'minai or mim b'she'ena minai, if it has 100 to be mevatel, it's aser. If it has 100 mevatel, it's mutter. If it doesn't, it's aser. So Gemara loy reisha b'meya v'chad v'seifa b'meya. There's a difference. There's a difference. It's a very small difference, but there is a difference. It's saying that by min b'minai, which is the ratio, then you need 101 in order to be mevatel of heter to be mevatel iser. But by min b'she'ena minai, you only need 100. Fact the Gemara, v'chi yesh by kedei lechametz b'mei v'chad amaloi bottle. I'm just going to give a little, just to give a little flavor to what this discussion is about 100. Where does 100 come from? And why would 101 be different than 100? The thought is 101 and 100 are really 99 and 100. It means 99 of Heter plus 1 of Isser adds up to 100. 100 plus 1 of Heter adds up to 101. And the reason for this is that the Torah says, Legabi, this is all Legabi Truma. And Legabi Truma, we say that Trumas Meiser is the Torah uses a lashon of Kodesh on it, which Kodesh can sometimes mean Isser. And what we understand that pasuk as saying that if there's the amount of Trumas Meiser that's left in something of Heter, Trumas Meiser is first you separate Meiser that goes to a Levi. No, not Meiser. You separate Truma. No, what am I talking about? You make the separation of 1/10 of Meiser Rishon that goes to a Levi, and then you take 1/10 of that, which is Trumas Meiser, which goes to a Kayin. So you take 1/10, and then you take 1/10 of that, so that's 1/100th. Minus a couple of decimal points. So that's what we get. The Torah says that's also, so that's what we get. It has to be 1 in 100 by Truma. In any case.
I don't know. It's not so back in the Gemara, right? When we're trying to say the example of lahachmir, right?
Yeah.
So we said if it has Baikidei Lahalais, then it's Aser, right? Doesn't make a difference if it's 101 or not, then it's Aser.
Hold on. By which one? By Mimbamina, right?
Right, so Ketzad.
If yesh by Kedei L'chametz, you mean? Or by Kedei L'halis?
We said the first thing Ketzad Sar Shachiten Shnafel Isas Chiten, V'yesh by Kedei L'chametz. Then it doesn't make a difference. Then either way, it's Aser.
And that's the same. Mimbamina and Mimbashenamina actually are the same in that regard.
And but aim by Lahalis b'mei v'echad bein sheyesh by Kedei L'chametz by aim by Kedei. Why is it also Aser there?
Because it doesn't have me'av echad to be mevatalit. If it doesn't have enough to be mevatalit, then it's not going to help. Whether even the fact that it's not kedei lechametz, you don't have enough to be mevatalit. So saying if they're both 100, then that's the same as min b'she'ena minei. So he wants to be mechalit. No, that means if you have 101, but kedei lechamet by min b'she'ena minei, it only needs 1 to 100. But now the Gemara is fact the Gemara the Gemara asks how could there be such a thing? What's the svara? That's the way the basic I think taisha of the Gemara is. Why would it not be? We have a svara that we said from this. From the pasuk by Truma that will tell you why you need 1 in 100. But if you have 101, why would you say 101 is not enough? You need more than that. Bata was saying that you need one extra one by Mimbamina. Why should it be such a thing? Ishtik. And he had no response to that. He said, well, Taka, he didn't have an answer. Amalei. So he said to him, Dilma Shani Sar Motzei Kasha. So Abaya asked the question, but he says maybe you could answer like this. While it's true that you need 100, 100 is the upper boundary of what should be, of what the Torah tells you, but maybe Sa'ar, Sa'ar is something that causes fermentation. So maybe that, because of its nature, it needs a little bit more to be mevatel. That's what we're understanding. Amalei adekarten milsa the Amar of Yosef Bachanina. You reminded me of what Rabbi Yosef Bachanina said. Like al shir and shavin. It's taka true that we don't say the same shir, even though the fermentation is not recognizable. You don't see it, but because it has the potential of chimutz, of fermentation, it requires a mashahu larger shir for bit. Where do we see that? Shari tzir. Tzir is like a fish brine. Shiurei karv l'masayim. It needs close to 1 in 200. We'll see it's actually 101 in 192 to be bought. It's nan. Dag tame, a non-kosher fish. Tzirei aser. Its tzir is aser. Yehuda Aimer, revius b'sosayim. Yehuda says not only is it aser, it's only bottle if you have a revius in 2 saw. And Rashi goes through the math, which is really not that hard math. A revius is a quarter of a lug. So that's 1 in 4. A lug is a quarter of a kav. So that's 1 in 16. 1 in 6. A revius is 1/16 of a kav. And a saw is 6 kavim. So each kav, each saw, is 4 times. No, I'm sorry. Each saw is 6 kavim. So each saw is 4 times 16. Am I getting 6 times 16, which is 96. 6 times 16 is 96, and we're talking about 2 saw, so that's 192. So you see that there's such a thing that because this tzir is very pungent and it is capable of having a strong impact, it needs this higher amount in order to be aser, in order to be mutter, to be bottled to the heter. Track the Gemara. For Amar Rabbi Yehuda min b'minai loy bottle. What do we have to come on? Why are we saying that it's bottle in 192? Rabbi Yehuda, this is said over b'shem Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says revius b'sasayim. He should say it's never bottle. So Gemara shani tzir dezeh ba'almahu. The tzir, this fish brine, is not actual pieces of non-kosher fish. It's something that emanates from the fish. It exudes from the fish, but it's only a tam of the fish. It's not, or like tam. It sounds almost like the tam ke'ikr question, but it's not the actual substance of the fish, but it's something that comes out of it, and therefore it doesn't have the din of min b'minai. It's a different substance altogether. The Mishnah said weiter. Kate said misharina. How do we test? When you have a gid that was cooked together with the thigh of the animal, how do you test? How do you judge whether it gave a taste into the thigh? They're both the same min. They both taste the same. So how can you see if there's a taste given? So we said that you judge it as if it was meat or the gid into turnips. Amar Rav Huna kibasar rashi liftis. We said kibasar belifsis, basar as meat in turnips. Now we're saying it's not just basar in turnips, but masar in the leaves of turnips, which are more sharp than the turnips themselves. So it takes more to put a taste into them, or takes less, I guess, for the taste of the turnips to overwhelm the basar. Zakumar Mishnah Masisin like Tana. Our Mishnah is not like another Tana. He says, don't give a tam at all. So if you say that they don't give a tam, there's nothing to discuss. How do you judge their taste? Connect as basar, but they don't have a taste of basar. Someone came to Rav Chanina, Yehuda bar Zivna Abava. Yehuda bar Zivna Zavina was sitting at the gate in front of Rav Chanina's house. Amalei, my Amalach, this person came and asked him about a din of a gid inside a yerech. And he said, what did Rav Chanina tell you? Amalei Sharyun. Now, he said, it's mutter. Amalei, Hadar Elula Kaimei. He said, bring it back into him. Because to check, it doesn't sound right. L'chayra, he held that it's not bottle. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. He holds aim begidim nice and tam, and therefore it shouldn't. He held it's aim begidim nice and tam, but we hold this person standing by the gate. Yehuda Bazavina thought we say yesh begidim nice and tam. So he sent the guy back in to Reb Chanina, and Reb Chanina said, "I'm a man high to come at Who is this person by the gate who's making the problems? Zil Emile Lamanda Yosef Abava. Go tell the person standing by the gate, Ain begidim b'noisen tam. You're incorrect. There's nothing to worry about. It. Taka doesn't cause any problems with the yerch, with the thigh, with the gid in it, if you cook them together. Kiyasul kameder of Ami, Mishadahu l'kameder of Yisuk bar Choloiv, the Moiri Bola Hatera. When they would go to Rav Ami, he would send them to this other person, Yisuk bar Choloiv, because he would say they were mutter. B'shum de Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he would say b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi that Ain begidim b'noisen tam. The Leilo Svirle, Rav Ami himself did not hold like that, but he didn't have this Messiah from his rabbi, so he would send to somebody who did have the Messiah, because that's taka the halach. The halacha ain begidim b'noisen tam. The halacha is ain begidim b'noisen tam. That al pi halacha, if you put the two together, if you cook your giran nosha together with the yerech, it's not going to give a tam. But Rashi is careful to say that don't paskin based on what we just said. It's like Rashi. 3 lines to the bottom. Halacha ain begidim b'noisen tam. Obey nispashal, obey nimlach, obey nitzla. Whether you cooked it or you salted it or you roasted it. Mashlichai, you just throw away the gid, umutter, and the rest of the thigh is mutter. If you didn't remove the shemen before you cooked it, the shemen doesn't have the din of einais and tam, and midrabban and the shemen on the gid anosha is also aser. So Rashi is careful to say, don't think you can just ignore the gid anosha. You're going to aser your whole gid, the whole yerach. If you must remove it before you cook it. We said in the Mishnah, Gid HaNasha that was Nisbashal, the Gid HaNasha that was Nisbashal together with other slices, other chatichas of meat, the din is, well, depending on whether it's batal or not, whether the tam is batal, and so on. But we said that if that piece of meat is still in the pot, the original Gid HaNasha, and you can't tell which one is the Gid HaNasha, then it's going to be also, right? If you remove the meat, then the other slices are mutter. If it's mevatel, the tam is batal. But if you couldn't remove the original Gid HaNasha because it got mixed in with the other sinus, then it's going to be off. In fact, the Gemara, the levatel beruba, why don't we say that the Gid HaNasha itself is batal beroiv? So for the Gemara, beri yashani, the Gid HaNasha is a full thing on its own, and it's not considered to be batal. I'm going to find 3 different versions of what something that's unique or that has a certain chashivas, a certain prominence that makes it that it's not batal. The first one is a beria, which the example we always give is like a bug is a beria, a full living thing is considered chashiv that it doesn't become batal. The Gemara continues, the Mishnah also said not just to Gid HaNasha, but also if you have a piece of meat in which is nevela, which is also asur, you have the same din that as long as that piece of nevela is not distinguishable from the heter pieces, the pieces of basa that are not nevela, you're not going to be able to eat it as long as that chatich of nevela is still there. In fact, Gemara again, v'tibatal beruba. Why is the batal beruv? So Gemara says it's going to depend on the second variation of where you have something that's significant that's not batal. We have a Gemara later. We have a Gemara which we've seen several places through Shas, that in order to determine whether something is significant, one of the ways of determining significance is whether something is counted out when it's sold. But the question is, does it have to be that anything that is on occasion counted out when it's sold, that makes it chashav that it's not batal? Or, so if you say like that, kol shadarka limana shaninu, this is also slices of meat sometimes are counted out. They're not sold necessarily in bulk. But according to Mandama, it only includes as significant those things that are always counted, and there's a list that the Gemara in Beya brings. I think it's 8 things that are counted out, or maybe 3, I don't remember, it's 3 or 8. One of those things, but none of them are a piece of meat. Sometimes meat is sold in without counting as just a bulk item. So there's a third way that something can become significant and it doesn't become batal. So since it's something that you can give to an oireach, you put in front of a guest, so therefore it's not batal. Utricha. And we need both of these things. The Mishnah had to say both the gid as well as the nevela. The gid is a full limb of its own, and therefore it has chashivas, and that's why it's not batal. Chaticha, a slice of meat, is not a full slice. It's a cut up piece from a larger part of an animal. Emaloi. Maybe that's not gonna. Maybe that is batal. Maybe roiv because it doesn't have such chashivas. Something that's fed to archim. Our gid is not something that's fed to archim. Emaloi. Tzricha. That's what we need both. Darsh Rabba Babachana. Rabbi Babachana said, Chaticha shel nevela v'shel dog tame eino eseres asher titin tam beroitiv ubekiva v'chatichas. Now the language of this sounds like it's saying a very simple thing that seems very unobjectionable. It says you have a chaticha, a piece of nevela, or a piece of non-kosher fish. It's not going to be aser until it gives a tam into the soup or into the sediment as that it's being cooked in, and the other chatichas. But because he says it in this broad way, and it's going to become evident in a minute in the Gemara, it means to say, even though you first cooked it with another single piece, it's saying even if you need that second piece to provide the tam, in order for it to be sufficient to provide a tam, that's going to be enough to answer the whole thing. Uki Rav Amayra Alev V'Darash. Rav placed an Amayra, something to repeat his words, and he darshened, Kivin shenosan tam b'chaticha, chaticha atzma nasan avela v'yiseres kol ha'chatichas. He says this is going to tell us the din of chaticha nasan avela. That if you think about it, it's a good theoretical question. We know that a piece of meat, let's say you have 100 pieces of meat. So one piece, and each one is a pound. So one piece in the other 99, assuming let's say that you need 160 to be nice and tam. But if it's 1 in 61, it's no longer nice and tam and it'll be bought. What if you took one of these 1 pound steaks and you cooked it together with another 1 pound steak? And then you took those two pieces and you cooked it with the other 98. So at this point, the two pieces together are only 1 in 50. So they are a nice and tam, it should be asa. But on the other hand, you know that all the tam really came from the first one. So ultimately, it's really only 1 in 100. So how do we look at it? Do we look at it that it's chaticha nas and avela? That once you cooked the first piece together with the second piece became an avela, and it's just as asur as the first piece, and the two of them, now you have 2 pounds giving tam into 98, and therefore it's asur. Or not. So Rav wanted to say, unlike Rabba Bachana, even though you don't see it at all in his words, at least I don't see it, but because he said it as a general rule, it was understood he was saying even under those circumstances it will still be mutter, because it even if it gave into one chaticha first, you don't say chaticha nas nevela. Rav saying no. Kivin shenasan tam b'chaticha atzma nas nevela. The chaticha becomes an nevela. Vayseres kol hachatichas. Kulan mibnei shehin mina, and then he throws in at the end because they're the same min. There's the same tam and it sounds like Rav is saying because of the shita of Rabbi Yehuda that min b'mina is not bottle. Amr later Rav Safal Abai Michti Rav Kaman Amr l'shmaitzik Rabbi Yehuda dama min b'mina le bottle. He said it's because it's min b'mina. So he's saying it's because min b'mina le bottle. Mar yikinos and tam, I feel kinos and tam nami. So in that case, what difference does it make whether it gave a tam to the second chaticha? What's the relevance? In any case, it's min b'minai, and min b'minai is not bottle. It will go into the other pieces of steak. Those all have the same tam. Amalei, so he answers him back, we're not talking about, that means he's saying, as long as you still have that first slice is providing its tam, and its tam, it doesn't make a difference how much it is. It's mim b'minoi to the other pieces of steak, so it'll all become mutter from that first one. So he says, no, we're talking about where you place the first one together with the second one. Let's say the second one, the second one was 2 pounds. So theoretically, it would be enough on its own. But we're talking about where you took away the first one, and you only have the second one to be metama the other ones. So just because of, so we can't say anymore that mim b'minai causes it to be asa. So if not for the fact that we say chaticha nasa devela, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says mim b'minai is not batal, you wouldn't have any actual. If not for the fact that chaticha nasa nevela, there'd be no iser here at all. But once we say chaticha nasa nevela, then even if it's just 1 pound, I'm going to say mim b'minai lebatal, and it's going to be yasser. Even though we're still only, right, we had 2 pounds at the beginning, 1 pound of iser and 1 pound of heter. Now you have is 1 pound of chaticha nasa nevela. That's enough because of mim b'minai is batal together with chaticha nasa nevela. Rava Amar, I feel tema loy kadam v'silka. It's not necessarily that's why we had to say that it's usher. I will even. What do you need chaticha nasa nevela if he wasn't kadam v'saleyak? Well, you have to say mim b'mina is batal. Well, it's we're going mim b'mina is not batal. So why doesn't that original first chaticha asa the whole thing? But it's because it's not really mim. It's not a full-fledged mim b'mina. Have a min umina v'davar acha. Over here, in addition to the 1 pound, the first steak and the second steak and all the other 98 steaks, it's being cooked in a soup. So the soup and the sediment are a different thing. You take out whatever is the same min and you remove it. And then you would normally say that we remove whatever is the same as it. So therefore, you take everything that's everything that's osir, and you look at everything that's mutter, both the things that are minai and the things that are not minai, and you add them together, and then you decide whether you have 60. But rather, you say whichever is min b'minai, they are removed. They're going to be osir because min b'minai is not batal. But the other stuff, the soup, we look at them on their own, kneged the thing that is einay minai, and you determine whether it's 60 to be mavatalit. So that's why we have to say both mim b'minai and you have to say chaticha nasa nevela. Zok the Gemara, Zok the Mishnah. What time did we start? Okay, we could go a couple more minutes. Noyig b'tahayr ve'in noyig b'tmeya. The din of gid hanasha is only noyig on a kosher animal like a cow or a sheep or a goat. Ve'in noyig b'tmeya, but it's not noyig on a lion or a pig. Yehuda imer af b'tmeya. If you eat the gid hanasha b'tmeya, you're also going to be chayiv on that gid hanasha. Amrav Yehuda, and Yehuda says his reason. Alev ne Yaakov nesa gid hanasha. Medayim behemet tmei muteres. The gid hanasha was said to Yaakov with the malach, and that was before Matan Torah. So it was to Bnei Yaakov. The Bnei Yaakov had not yet been given the Isurim of a behemet tmeya. Amru loy, but Sinai never. The Chum answered no. Although the Maisa was written of the gid hanasha, and that's why it's usher, it just meant that when the Torah was given, it was usher. It's not that it was usher at that time. Zok the Gemara, V'saru Yehuda iser chalal iser. Why would Rabbi Yehuda say that there's an iser of gid hanasha? As we're going to see in a brisa later on that it's going to say that it's going to make it clear that he means to say you chayiv double. If someone eats a behemoth tmei's gid hanasha, he's chayiv for eating behemoth tmei. If he eats of a pig, of a chazer, he's a chayiv for eating the chazer, and he's also chayiv for eating gid hanasha. That means, though, that you have to say chal iser chal iser, right? The iser of the behemoth tmeya is from when it first comes into existence. This of gid anoshel l'chayil only happens when the animal is born. I might have thought that the nevela of even an oif tame is metama. It's begadim when a person swallows it. With the person's begadim when he swallows it, it gets that tuma. Tamaloy nevelu trevo lo yoichel l'tamaba. A nevela and a treva you should need to be metambit. Mishay sur mishum bal toichel nevela. That comes to tell you only something which has an isser of eating a nevela. Yatzazesh and yisur mishum bal toichel nevela and mishum bal toichel tmei. When someone eats the nevela of a oif, you're not going to be mechayiv two things. You're only mechayiv for eating a behemoth tmeya. Since the behemoth tmeya came obviously before the isser nevela, the isser is not chalal isser. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda holds ein isser chal isser. So how could he say over here that there's an isser yichayiv for gid hanasha on a behemoth tmeya? V'chi tema kasaver ein begidim noisin tam. Maybe you'll say that he holds that the gid has no tam, and something that there's no tam, you can't be asked. There's no isser to eat the horns or the hooves of a behemoth tmeya, of a chazir, because those things don't have a taste. The isser is only on those things that are basa that have a taste. Ubetmeya nami isser gid ikka isser tumaleka. That's therefore I'll say by a tmeya that it only has there's only a isser gid anasha and there's no isser alt tamid alt behemoth tmeya. But it's not true. Does Rabbi Yehuda really hold that they don't have a tam? Vatanya.
The fact that it doesn't have a tam, that makes it
that there's no isser of eating a behemoth tmeya. It's like eating the bones of a behemoth tmeya. There's a whole thing with gelatin, I think. Gelatin that comes from behemoth tmeya. I think midirabanan maybe it's also, but it's not also midiraisa for eating the non-edible portions of a behemoth tmeya. The only reason why we said by Yigid HaNosha there's an Isser because that's the way the Torah said. The Torah said Yechayev for eating Yigid HaNosha in spite of the fact that it's inedible. So Gemara, but is it true that he holds that it doesn't have a tam? Tanya, Hoichel Yigid HaNosha shall behemoth tmeya. Somebody says Yigid HaNosha of a non-kosher animal. Yehuda Mechayev Shtayim. Yehuda says Yechayev two. Rav Shimon Poiter. Shimon says Yepotter. You see explicitly, you're just saying you're chayiv for both behemoth tmeya and for gid anasha, so it can't be saying ein begidim b'noisin tam. So like we just said, Kusavar noyig b'shlil. He holds that the isser gid anasha starts from the time that a fetus is formed. The isser gid v'isser tumah b'hadi adadi kasin. They both come at the same time, and therefore there's no ein isser chal isser. They're both being chal at the same time. There's no problem with having both isurim at the same time. So, can you say that Yehuda holds that the Isser Gid Anasha is noyig on a fetus, on an infant behemoth tmeya v'atnan noyig b'shlil? That we said that the din the Isser Gid Anasha and the Isser Chela, we had this a few blot ago, is noyig by a fetus, even by a fetus that was shechted, it still have an Isser of Gid Anasha and Shlil and Chelev. He says the Gid Anasha is not noyig by Shlil, v'chalvay motor, and his Chelev is motor. When you shecht the mother, that also is matter the isurim on the Isur Gid Anasha and of its Chelev. So you see, there is no Isur Gid Anasha but that was there before the shechita of the mother. So no, Hani Milgabe Tahira. That's only a special din by the Tahira that there's no Isser Gid Hanasha or Chelev when you shech the mother. The Rachman Omer, Kol Ba Behema Techelu. It's part of the limud where we said that when you shech the mother that's mater, its fetus that doesn't need its own shechita, it also incorporates within that heter. The Torah is also saying that there's no Isser of Gid Hanasha or of Chelev. Avo Betmeya, Noig. But Ein Chanami, the Isser Gid Hanasha on a Behema Tmeya will happen as soon as it's conceived, and they'll both come at the same time. In fact, can you really say they come at the same time? And this should all be familiar. We saw this several blot back. But these are the tumas that cause if a Nazir came in contact with them, he has to restart his Nazirus, and he has to shave himself. Ala mace, if he touched a mace, Val kazayis min a mace, if he touched a kazayis min a mace. The kashalan, a kazayis min a mace, megaleach ala mace kula the kolshkein. What do you have to tell me? A whole mace and a kazayis. Obviously, if you have to do for a kazayis, you have a partial mace, you have to do for a whole mace. We're talking about a very small fetus of a mace that didn't even reach a kazayas, and you only have that by a mace that didn't even have the sinus form. It has the full form of a human body, but it doesn't yet have sinus. So you see, Alma is a tuma kadim. You see that the sinus form after the body. So you see that the behemoth may the same thing. The first is a behemoth may, and later on the sinus develop. So how can you say they both formed at the same time? Afal gav Alma is a tuma kadim. So tomorrow afal gav the is a tuma kadim also is a gidim chayla. Even so, it's not a problem. In this case, even though Rabbi Yehuda holds ein issa chal issa, this is an exception over here. Issa will be chal issa. Shechin yisur noyig b'nei noyach, because it has a chumrah that it's noyig even by b'nei noyach. Like we said before, when you have an isser chumr, that then it could be chal even on an isser kal. So since this has the chumrah that's noyig on b'nei noyach, it will also be chal on top of the isser tumah. And this. I rather saw that this is a machlekes rishonim on Rafal's question. Does this mean? I think it was Rafal. I don't know if Rafal or Luzi. Someone asked that. Does that mean that all bnei noyach have an isser of gid hanosha, or does it just mean the bnei Yisrael before Matan Torah? And it's a huge machlekes rishonim what this means. Zakmar dekanami like it's Taisus and Rashi. Dekanami, Diktani, and I'll prove it to you that this is the case, that it's a Isser Chalal Isser because of the Isser Chamur. Diktani, Amar Yehuda V'aloy B'nei Yaakov Nesa G'nanosham Adai Behemet Tvei Muteris Lahem. That was the reason given in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yaakov says that the Gid Hanosha is Asr because it was already Asr to the Gid Hanosha before, while the Behemet Tmeya was mutter for them. So you see that the point, the crux of why the Isser of Gid Hanosha applies is because it applies to Bnei Noach. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shem continue tomorrow morning.
Shkayach.
Shkayach.